What's up, guys? Magnus here. It's been a while. I've been doing a lot of live streaming lately on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/personalmagnus. And on this channel, I had a live stream in the past week, but I haven't really done a gaming update. But today, you know the title. Why am I giving up completely on physical media and gonna do all my gaming on download? Well, first, if you're new to this channel, definitely consider subscribing. I like to talk about games, especially nostalgic games, gaming in general, and those old games that come to light. Specifically, Shenmue is a preference. So if you're good with Sega, good with Shenmue, you should definitely subscribe because I love that. But let's get on to the topic here. Now, I'm an old school gamer. I've been gaming since the 80s, as I was born in the 80s, but I've been gaming with 8-bit systems, even before that, 16-bit systems, so on and so forth. And when it comes to gaming like that, it was always, or predominantly in those early years, was physical media. But as of today, I can tell you, I'm taking a stance. I no longer support physical media for video games. Now wait, before you click off or leave your hateful comment, let me tell you why. Okay, so growing up, I absolutely loved physical media. When you would actually go to a store, because there was no Amazon back there, online ordering, you'd have to go to a store, hope that your game is there, if not stand in line just to get a copy of a game on release date if it's super popular. But you would go and you'd pick up a cartridge for the most part, and there were CDs later on, but cartridge or CD, and then you would actually get it in your hands. And while getting it in your hands after being hyped maybe by a gaming magazine to open the jewel case or open whatever casing it came in, to read the book, get excited about the backstory of the game, even though you pretty much knew how the controls were going to go in your game, because for the most part you can figure it out while you play the game. And a lot didn't have tutorials, so the instruction book was helpful, but it also tend to actually fill you in on the backstory of a lot of these games. That was cool, and having that was awesome. And then being able to pop it in and know that you're going to be able to play it right away. Granted, some people who own Nintendo, which I didn't personally, had those cartridge issues. But for the most part, if you were a Sega fan like I was, you didn't really have issues popping in your cartridge in your Sega Master System or Sega Genesis and turning it on. But then we grew from the traditional cartridge media into a CD-based media or optical disc-based media, because eventually it went from CDs to DVDs to whatever Dreamcast decided to come up with their gigadiscs. But this media was a concern for me in particular because I owned the Sega CD. I got it for Christmas in 1993. And though most games played relatively well, a new kind of thing that I wasn't used to was load times. Now, load times themselves were just kind of, if you're going to have a lot more data and you didn't have it all on a RAM cartridge, you needed to access that data. So I understood load times were like a necessary evil. But the flip side to that is the care that you had to take for those CDs and DVDs was very sensitive when compared to a cartridge. If you scratched that disc, it no longer worked for you. If you, unfortunately, let someone else step on it, it no longer worked for you. And believe it or not, they age poorly as well, where you would have taken care of a disc, but maybe a few years later, depending if you let it in a room with too much humidity, they would also fail on you and unable to read. So that's hard-earned money that you paid for that optical media that no longer works. And now it just collects dust, and you can't even resell it because of the value is gone to nothing if you can't load the game. So that's pretty sad, and one of the major problems I had with using optical media. Granted, the benefits were great, but the fact that they would wear out on you kind of stunk. It didn't deter me, obviously, from gaming, from upgrading my systems, from getting PlayStation 2, I got the Xbox, Dreamcast, all these new systems coming out with optical-based console system style that required that you would have a disc. So I did that, but then another problem started to kind of rear its ugly head, which technically would have been a problem no matter what generation you're in, even possibly today's generation, is that having the space for all of those games requires money just to invest in, to have either the storage area to have it in like a bigger home or your own gaming room, or eventually, or have to get it, put it in somewhere in storage just to hold all of it, unless you're one to resell it, because the value of reselling a game is great. You have it, you bought it, then you have the physical copy and you can resell it. So that is a way to actually get some return once you no longer want a game. But I'm not the type, and this is why this kind of is particular to me. I do not like to resell my games. I like to revisit games. I'm a person who loves revisiting nostalgic games from many years ago. And even if it's not that great, you know what? Sometimes I like to go back to it and see why it's a horrible game and laugh at it. From that perspective, if you're one who loves reselling games and loves reselling physical media, then I understand and have at it. But for someone who values and actually gets a warm, nostalgic feeling for these classic games, it doesn't work for me. It still wasn't stopping me from continuing to buy my physical games. So in the PS3 era and the Xbox 360 era, which was at this point 2 generations ago, can you believe that? Those were really the first predominant console eras. Granted, the original Xbox had a hard drive, but these were the predominant console eras where you can actually download full games to your console. And this is separate from PC, by the way. I'm speaking to this level separate from PC. Having that ability was great. There were a lot of games that I downloaded on PS3, and because I had an Xbox 360 as well, but I didn't use it as much since I was predominantly PS3, and I liked their games. So I would play the games, and I would still purchase the Blu-rays because I thought, well, this is great. But then I started noticing a pattern, and it was a pattern that became relevant in the PS3 games, and that pattern was the fact that many games needed to be installed anyway. Now this was a bit of a concern for me because I'm like, if I'm taking up hard drive space in buying these games, then why am I getting physical media? But an advantage of having physical media too was that you didn't have to install hard drive space, and that would cost you money, taking up all of your hard drive space. So I was like, I'll still take physical media because I'm not going to run out, and when I want to play a game, I could just grab it and pop it in the console, and I don't have to worry about buying another hard drive. So initially that was my concern, but then some games needed to be installed, and that was okay as long as not all of them were. And because a lot of these digital downloads were priced the same as physical media, well, why wouldn't I get physical media? Because you get to not only play the game, but you get to actually tangibly hold the game. That was my reasoning. Got a ton of PlayStation 3 games, and they were cool. Now, I had a little flood in one of my apartments that unfortunately led to some of my PlayStation 3 games and other games that I had be completely damaged. And that is just par for the course, because when you have that type of game, you're going to have the possibility, if you don't store it right, something like that happens. And that hurts. But of course, something could happen on PS3, which didn't. That could also destroy all of your games in a console. However, if you have a console and you downloaded games, more than likely your games are linked to your ID so that you could replace those games and re-download them and you wouldn't have an issue. Unfortunately, you can't really do that when you have physical media. Regardless, I was still a fan of physical media because I thought it just made sense. Fast forward to now the PlayStation 4 era arrives. And I'm thinking, I still like physical media. I still want to move forward with that. But then I found that with a couple, I maybe have like 2 or 3 physical media games, including Shenmue 3. I found that they required install. And then I found that all games on PS4 require a complete install. And then they would be in your overlay, right? And basically all the game data would be in your hard drive. So you're not even saving hard drive space with the physical media. It's just an install disk. But with all games that you have physical media, you have to have it in the console in order for you to launch the game, which is annoying. If I'm downloading a game or the game's taking up hard drive space, at the very least, I would hope that I could just start it without having disk inside. But you can't. Nor does owning the physical media link that game to your account. So should something happen to that physical media, you're taking up hard drive space, but you can't even play the game unless you repurchase it. Which at that point, it was like the final straw. I was like, I'm not taking up space. The physical media, which, and by the time you get to PS4, was just the box. You were no longer getting a nice full instruction booklet, which I enjoyed back in the day. It just seemed to be just a Blu-ray case with a color print on it and a disc that has some color art on it, but that's it. It's just the install. And from that point, I decided to switch. No more physical media. I'm downloading everything. Like I said, I don't resell it, but a problem that was solved was the space. A problem that was solved was the need to grab the physical media and put it in the console anymore to play it. I could just have it all there. But then there's those fears about, well, what about if your account no longer can download those games because the PlayStation or whatever service that you subscribe to stops working and shuts down their servers? Well, that has been a thought of mine, but I also know that and appreciate that at least for the latest consoles, and I'll always address it on a console per console basis, but with the latest consoles, you can either upgrade your hard drive to hold more games in your system, which means you have it and it's in there and it deteriorates at a lot less of a rate than DVDs would. Granted, cartridges are a separate story. But you could also collect hard drives that have these games for you, multiple games in a smaller amount of space. And I've got several hard drives that fill in terabytes worth of games that I can just play whenever I want to without worrying about not having them. And also, you could create backups artificially by re-downloading the games to different hard drives at your own pleasure, at your own leisure too. And then use the console going forward and have the games without deteriorating quality, without it skipping and then stopping on you going forward. That's why, at least for consoles, I will continue to download and be happy with it. When it comes to PC, I think optical media is completely dead for PC. I think having a Steam account has completely replaced the need for having optical media. And even publishers have realized that it doesn't really make sense to publish games to optical media anymore, given that many computers nowadays that are released no longer have DVD or CD drives or Blu-ray drives in order for you to install games. It's just you connect online and go for it. Now, if I didn't have internet connection, I probably would still be towards optical media, right? But at this point, that's not an issue or a problem. So it's why I quit optical media. But that's all I have to say on this subject, and that's what I think about it. But let me know what you guys think on that subject. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I want to at least continue to do one video a week. And I'm definitely live on Twitch, which is what takes up most of my time. My Twitch is twitch.tv/personalmagnus. I've been playing Shenmue 1. I'm about halfway through Shenmue 2 and then going to finish up on Shenmue 3. So follow me there, subscribe here. My Twitter is @Magnus547. And of course, as always, you can make my day when you subscribe and follow today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys next time.